Hi, my name is Chris and this is Battle Nonsense. Recently I've released a video called Battlefield for low ping netcode footage. In this video I've been playing at 60 frames per second on servers to which I had a ping of 15 to 25 milliseconds. The purpose of this video was to show you that even if you play at a steady 60 frames per second on a server which has a low ping, you can still get shot around the cover, die from just one hit, or die without even getting shot at. You drop dead from one frame to another. And that is with opponents who have also a low ping just like you. In the comments to this video many players wrote that they are suffering from exactly the same issues as I've showed there. Some even wrote that they can't play Battlefield 4 because they are suffering from those issues constantly, and that's surely not fun at all in a first-person shooter. I've also been asked if the footage I showed there is still valid because just a few days after I released the video, DICE published a big patch which also changed a few things around related to the netcode. Two very visible changes that were introduced in the patch are those little icons on the right side of the screen. If you see those show up, then this means that there's something going wrong on your client. That could be massive frames per second drops, or it could be packet loss. The second icon that was added is the headshot indicator. If you see this icon show up in your kill screen, then this means that you have been killed by a headshot. The reason why DICE added these two new icons to your head-up display is to allow them and you to identify what's going on in recorded footage. So if you were killed by one shot and you have the headshot icon appearing in your kill screen, then the kill could be legit because you were killed by a headshot. If you were killed around the corner and have the boxes appear on the right side of the screen, then this means that you suffer from, in example, data loss, and this could explain why you were killed around the corner. So, with these two new features in mind, let's have a look at the footage I recorded during the last few days while playing Battlefield 4. So as you can see, the issues I've showed in the first video are all still there after the patch. However, it would be unfair to say that there was no improvement. Especially the much shorter black screen on spawn is very good, because now you can finally spawn on your teammates again without having to worry too much that you spawn and have a knife in your throat. So that's definitely great to have. The issue that you spawn without a weapon, however, did increase since the black screen on spawn was reduced. So there's definitely some work that needs to be done to fix this as well. The hit registration feels much better, much more precise, and the issues of getting killed around the corner and getting strangely killed from one hit or no hit at all also decreased. However, during the last few days there seemed to have been some server patches, new server releases, and they made the situation worse again. Not as bad as before the patch, but it's not as good as it was closely after the patch. However, you will always find players who report the opposite, so you can never be 100% certain what's going on, but that is how I experience the game since the patch. So now that I answered the question if the footage I showed in the first video is still valid after the patch, let's have a look at other questions that were asked in the comment section previously. These questions were: why is a low ping important? Why is it important to have many frames per second? And I will show you other findings that I made in the netcode which are quite disturbing and explain many strange deaths that you died in the game. Now, before we continue, I'd like to say that my goal is to keep the following explanations as simple as possible. I do not want to explain everything in the finest detail, but rather give you a basic understanding of how things are working. I base my explanations on research that I've done, as well as tests that I've made. So a few things might not be entirely accurate. So let's start with the display limit and frames per second. The human eye can't see more than 30 frames per second, right? No, that's wrong. For some reason that number is in the internet for ages, but it is wrong. But I don't want to explain in detail why it is wrong and what the real limitation is. If you're interested, just Google it. There is really a lot of information in the internet which explains this in detail and accurately. So what are we dealing with? Our monitors have a refresh rate of 60 Hz. This means that in 1 second the monitor will rebuild the image 60 times. So you can see 60 different images in 1 second. This means that if you are playing at 60 frames per second, you will see one new frame for every rebuild. So what if you are playing at 30 frames per second? Well, then every frame will be displayed 2 times because the monitor is still running at 60 Hz. So 60 Hz and 60 frames per second, a new frame is displayed every 16.66 milliseconds. If you have the monitor running at 60 Hz and play at 30 frames per second, a new frame is displayed every 33.33 milliseconds. So what does that mean for you as a player? Well, it means that if you are playing at 60 frames per second, then you have less delay than you are playing at 30 frames per second. As you can see, you have an additional delay of 16.66 milliseconds. So what you see on your monitor might not be what is just happening. I know this is a very minor delay, but we are looking at more delay in the next few examples that I have prepared, and delays will start to pile up quite rapidly, and in the end it is very important that you minimize the delay everywhere where you can. So when you take a look at your server browser and you see that you have a 20 milliseconds ping to the game server, what does that mean? How does the server browser know that you have that ping to this server? Well, the Battlefield 4 client, which could be a PC or a console, is sending out an echo request to the game server. This request has a travel time, in this case 10 milliseconds. How long this travel time is depends on your network quality, your internet quality, as well as the distance between you and the game server provider. Once the Battlefield 4 game server has received your echo request, it will send out an echo answer. This answer also has a travel time, in this case 10 milliseconds. So your ping is the round trip time. This means 10 milliseconds plus 10 milliseconds equals 20 milliseconds. This is your ping to this game server. And I guess now it is also clear why you should always play on a server with a low ping. Because the longer the travel time, the longer the delay. And the more delay you have, the more lag you have. Now let's have a look at the travel time between clients. Let's assume that I am client 1 and I'm in a firefight with client 2. My client has a ping of 20 milliseconds. This means that the data I am sending to the game server has a travel time of 10 milliseconds. Client 2 has a ping of 30 milliseconds, so his data needs 15 milliseconds to reach the game server. So now I am client 1 and I am shooting at client 2. So my client needs 10 milliseconds to tell the game server, hey, I'm shooting at client 2. So now the game server forwards this information to client 2. Hey, client 1 is shooting at you. And this needs another 15 milliseconds. So in total, we have a travel time of 25 milliseconds. So when I'm shooting at client 2, it should only take 25 milliseconds for client 2 to know that I am shooting at him. Now I know that this is a pretty simplified explanation, but it should give you an idea how your ping is affecting your online experience and how it is affecting the delay and the lag you experience in the game. So when we look at this example, then client 1 is starting to shoot at client 2 and 25 milliseconds later, client 2 is aware that he is being shot at. However, this is not how it is actually working, because your client isn't sending out data the moment you are actually doing something, like starting to fire on another player. The frequency at which data is sent is determined by the tick rate. Now, what's the tick rate? Let's have a look at it. Since a few weeks we now know that Bad Company 1, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 all share the same tick rate. So what is that tick rate? The tick rate determines how frequently client and server are sending updates. In Battlefield 4, the tick rate is set to 10 updates per second. So this means that you send one update every 100 milliseconds. So what does that mean? Let's think back at our previous example. When I'm starting to shoot at another player, then this information takes 10 milliseconds to send to the server. That's the travel time of my data package between me and the server. So I'm starting to fire. Now I would assume that this information is instantly sent to the game server. But it's not sent instantly. It is sent at a fixed rate. 100 milliseconds. So, worst case scenario. An update from my client to the server has just happened. Now I'm starting to fire at the other player. This means that until the next update happens, in another 100 milliseconds, my client does not send that information to the server. So, we have a 100 milliseconds delay inside my client until it starts to send the data. And then we have the travel time of 10 milliseconds between my client and the game server. So we have 110 milliseconds delay from me starting to fire at the other player until this information reaches the game server. And from there's the next delay from the game server to the other client. Now this low update rate is part of the issue why you get shot around cover, or your shots sometimes don't register, or you have to aim behind the player to actually hit him because his hitbox is lagging behind the player. So Bad Company 1, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 all use the same update rates. All of these games have issues with the hit registration. All of these games have issues with the netcode. So if you go to YouTube and search for netcode failures or hitreg broken in one of these games, then you will find a lot of videos. Especially for Battlefield 3 you will find many videos which show how you get shot around the cover, sometimes with a delay of 1 up to 2 seconds. So why was this not a priority for DICE to fix in Battlefield 4? That's also what a user asked on Reddit, and the answer is, in my opinion, a quite shocking one. The DICE developer answered, if you know of all controversy before it happened, of course it would all be easily avoided. Sadly, we don't have that advantage. All we can do is prioritize features and try to estimate cost difficulty of implementation, then pick the things that will give you the most bang for the buck, so to speak, in terms of what players will actually enjoy. Well, I for one enjoy a first-person shooter where hit registration works. I do not enjoy a first-person shooter where every engagement feels like it's a gamble. It's not skill that matters, it's a gamble. So the bottom line, in my opinion, is that the update rate, the tick rate, in Battlefield is way too low. It has to be increased to at least 60 ticks. I see no other way to get a working, spot-on hit registration, a spot-on netcode. There is way too much delay in this game to be a good first-person shooter. But there is not just the tick rate, there are also bugs in the netcode, which lead to very strange things happening in the game, which I'd like to show you now. Here I have two PCs sitting right next to each other. They are not connecting to the game server through the same gateway. Each PC uses his own fiber internet connection. The video you see here is recorded at 60 frames per second with my camera, so there is no information lost in the recording process. To make the delay between the two PCs more obvious, I've disabled the audio coming from the left PC. Now pay attention, you are in for a surprise. So as you can see, sometimes you just don't see the other player fire. This now could explain why you die from what feel like one shot, while in fact the other player has fired 10 rounds at you. But that information never reached your client. Your client just received the message you've been fired at, and the next information was you're dead. And as you can see, this issue is not new, it is present since Battlefield 3. Now let's take a look at the delay between our two clients. What we have here is best case scenario. Server is empty, so it can't have any load issues. We have 60 frames per second. We have 15 milliseconds ping with each client to the server, which, as we remember, is the round trip time. So data can be sent between the clients at 15 milliseconds. But there is the tick rate, as we know now. So let's have a look at the actual delay. Now I'm not sure how well you can see this on YouTube because it will downconvert this footage from 60 frames per second to 30 frames per second. So let's have a look in slow motion again. So on the left screen we now see that my pistol is kicking back, and now it's updated on the right screen. So this is the difference in the timecode, 11 frames. Not bad, right? So how do we calculate the delay? Well, we are shooting at 60 frames per second, so one frame is displayed for 16.66 milliseconds. So this then means that we have a delay of 166 milliseconds between our two clients, where each has a ping of 15 milliseconds. Now remember, the game is running at a tick rate of 10, so it sends out an update every 100 milliseconds. What would happen if the game would run at a tick rate of 60, just like other first-person shooters? It would mean that an update is sent out every 16 milliseconds instead of every 100. So instead of 166 milliseconds delay, we would only have a delay of 82 milliseconds. We would cut down the delay in half in this best case scenario. I think it goes without saying that this would be a massive improvement for every Battlefield player. But there's something else I'd like to show you. Every player knows that issue. Someone shot you without even looking in your direction. Now there's a strange issue in the netcode where it does not match up in which direction a player is looking and in which direction he is shooting. Take a look. As you can see in the split screen, it nearly took the player model an entire second to look in my direction, while the player was able to shoot at me and hit me much earlier. This then causes the issue that what I'm seeing is not what is actually happening. In my tests I focused on the best case scenario to show you what is the best possible result you can get. It is obvious that as soon as you play on a server with a higher ping and with up to 64 players, the delays and the sync issues will only get worse. As I said before, I based this video on the informations I found while doing research as well as doing tests in Battlefield. I tried to keep everything as simple as possible to give you a basic understanding of what is happening and why. In case I really messed something up, please let me know in the comments. If you have any additional questions, just post them there. I hope that you found the information in this video useful, and for the Battlefield franchise I hope that DICE will finally realize how important it is for a first-person shooter to have a working hit registration, as well as keeping the clients in sync with each other all the time. And this means fixing the bugs in the netcode is not enough, they have to increase the tick rate. So thanks again for watching, see you next time.